Hi, my name is Alyssa, and I'm a math and science tutor. Today, I'm using the law of sines to find the height of a building. Let's get started. A 162-foot antenna is on top of a building. From a point on the ground, the angle of elevation to the top of the antenna is 32.5 degrees, while the angle of elevation to the bottom of the antenna from the same point is 26.5 degrees. How tall is the building? All right, first, I'd like to review the law of sines with you. So I'm going to draw a triangle, and I'm going to label the angles and the sides of that triangle. We'll label this angle alpha and this side A, this angle beta and this side B, and this angle gamma and this side C. The law of sines tells us that the sine of alpha over A is equal to the sine of beta over B is equal to the sine of gamma over C. And we can use that information to solve this problem. So let's go ahead and get started. The first thing I always do with problems like these is draw a picture of exactly what's going on. So first, I'll draw my antenna, which is 162 feet. And now I'll draw my building in blue. And this is what we're trying to find, the height of that building. And I'll represent that with an X. And we know that from some point on the ground, the angle of elevation to the top of the antenna is going to be 32.5 degrees. Okay, so this is a right triangle. And the first thing we're going to do is try and solve for this angle right here. How do we do that? We know that we have 90 degrees here, 32.5 degrees there. So let's go ahead and add those together. 90 plus 32.5 is equal to 122.5 degrees. You may have learned that a right triangle contains 180 degrees. So we can subtract 122.5 from 180 to get this angle here. 180 minus 122.5 is 57.5 degrees. So our angle is 57.5 degrees. Okay, now let's continue adding the rest of the information that we're given in our question. We have a second angle of elevation that's formed when we go from the bottom of the antenna to the same point. And the angle that's formed is 26.5 degrees. So as you can see, now we have two right triangles. We have this right triangle here formed by the smaller angle of elevation, and we have that larger right triangle formed by the first angle of elevation. And you may have noticed that there's actually a third triangle formed, and it's this one here. But this time it's not a right triangle. We're going to use that third triangle that we just formed and use it to solve for the hypotenuse of our smaller right triangle formed by the smaller angle of elevation. Because if we can solve for that hypotenuse, then we can solve for this building height. So let's go ahead and use the law of sines in order to solve for that hypotenuse. But first, we need one more piece of information. We need to know what this small angle is right here so that we can use the law of sines. In order to figure out what that angle is, we need to take our larger angle of elevation, which is 32.5, and subtract our smaller angle of elevation, which is 26.5. And we get 6 degrees. So this small angle right here is 6 degrees. And now we can use the law of sines. We have an angle and we have information opposite of that angle. So we can write the sine of 6 degrees over the information opposite of it, which is 162 feet, is equal to our other angle, the sine of 57.5 degrees over our hypotenuse, because this information is opposite of that angle. So let's go ahead and solve. We need to cross multiply and divide. So we have 162 times the sine of 57.5 is equal to h times the sine of 6 degrees. And we can go ahead and solve for h. To do that, we divide by the sine of 6 degrees on this side, and that'll cancel. And then we divide by the sine of 6 degrees on that side. Now you can plug this whole thing into your calculator to get h. And when you do that, you'll get 1,307.1 feet. So our hypotenuse here is 1,307.1 feet. And now we have enough information to solve for our building height. So let's go ahead and do that. We have our small angle of elevation here, which is 26.5 degrees. And we have information of that angle that we need that's opposite of that angle, and we have the hypotenuse. When we have information opposite over the hypotenuse of our angle, we use sine. So we can take the sine of 26.5 degrees and set it equal to our opposite information, or the building height that we're trying to find, over the hypotenuse, 1,307.1 feet. And now we just need to solve for x. And to do that, we're going to multiply this side by 1,307.1, and we're going to multiply this side by 1,307.1. And we can plug this information into our calculator to get x. And when we do that, we'll get 583.2 feet. That's our final answer. I hope this video helped you. If you would like to see me solve more common trigonometry homework problems, please like this video and subscribe to my channel. Thanks so much for watching.